Welcome to the Wellness Connection podcast with Fiona Kane. My name is Fiona Kane, and today I'm really excited because I've actually got my first guest. I've been going it alone so far. So I'm just really excited to introduce someone who I've known for quite a while, and he's been really inspiring actually in my life, and he's given me a great soundtrack to it as well. His name is Ohad Rein. Hi, Ohad.
Hi, Fiona. How's it going?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm pretty good. There's a bit of, I don't know if you guys can see, whoever can see this as opposed to whoever's listening. There's a bit of sunshine in Melbourne, so that's always good.
Wow, that's a surprise.
Yeah.
So, for those who don't know you, who are you?
Wow. Big question, Fiona. Starting with the big ones. I guess when I need to introduce myself like that to the world, I'd say I am a father, singer-songwriter, producer, performer. I'm also a yoga meditation teacher, mantra music facilitator, and currently also studying to become a psychotherapist. So a lot of hats.
Yes, many hats. And I first met you. I was drawn to this music by this Old Man River, whoever that was. I wasn't sure at the time, and I came along to a gig at the Clarendon in Katoomba, and I kind of I met you and I saw your show and got really into it and was up on stage with you actually doing do the helping you with that, and just got really inspired, and then I helped you out with different merch and things like that over the years at different gigs. But
That's
it kind
right.
of really your music just is. I find it, what's the word for it? Inspiring, relaxing, fun. I've just got a lot of inspiration and just a lot of like music gives me a lot of, what's the word for it? Comfort is the word
Uh
for it
huh.
as well.
Uh
And I
huh.
found a lot of comfort in your music over the years. So when I
Yeah.
play your music, it's kind of like, oh, my friend Ohad, he's here. He's with his beautiful sounds. So thank you for that, because I've really enjoyed and your live shows. If anyone hasn't seen you live, and if that opportunity comes up again sometime in the future, there's something special there that I really connect with. So thank you for the music and the inspiration.
Thank you, Fiona. And I got to use this opportunity to really thank you for all the help and support you've shown in those years, because you were like really helping us out in those
You couldn't
early
have done it without
days.
me.
I don't think we could have actually. You were there. You were
Yeah.
there, and
Yeah, that person selling the merch made all the difference, but no, I
well,
think
you know
there's
what it's like. It's like there weren't that many believers in that inner
yeah,
circle, and
yeah,
each person really counts. It doesn't take that
yeah.
many people to believe in you to
Having
help a
someone that believes
project.
in you.
Yeah, it's like more than
Yeah.
one person is already great.
Yes, yeah. No, I do believe in you, and I certainly did, and that was, I loved being a part of all of that. It's really, like, I'm not an artist myself, not in the way like music or that kind of thing,
Yeah,
and I love supporting artists though, because I feel like it's a really important part of our society. So when I find someone and I'm inspired by someone, I really love it's whatever I can do to support them, and even if that is just give them lots of love and show up and tell the
that,
world, shout from wherever I can, that's what I'll do.
that's incredible. It's very selfless and very kind.
So the reason that we're on this call today is I was on Facebook a couple of weeks ago and I noticed a post that you had written. And to put
Uh-huh.
this into context, I actually might read out that post so everybody knows what we're talking about. So Ahad was talking about, the topic is sort of winning and losing, or success and failure, and he was referring to a post, as a video with Pete Best, who was sometimes called the fifth Beatle, but essentially he was in the Beatles kind of right before Ringo Starr, and he was booted out and Ringo Starr came in. And he did an interview on Letterman, which I was trying to work out the timing of that interview. It must have been late 70s, early 80s, maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Anyway, this is what Ohad said, and this is what got me interested, or got me, kind of going, oh, wow, okay, yeah. So he said, I found this interview intriguing. Our culture celebrates the winners, but nobody wants to know about the losers. How about the guy that got kicked out of the Beatles just before they shot to fame, for instance? The crowd laughs maliciously during the interview, but maybe it's actually from discomfort and unease. We prefer not to know what happened to that poor guy. Subconsciously, we'd be understanding if he were to fall into a life of depression and bitterness because, as a society, we prefer to push these types aside, away from our view. Instead, we find Pete Best saying, I persevered with my own lifestyle. In the present moment, in time, I managed to retain my identity in my own sweet way. Wow, that's an incredible statement. I'd love to know where he found the character and courage to face what he'd faced and come out the other end saying that. I find him more inspiring than his bandmates that completely ghosted him after sending their manager to fire him without warning. Sure, they were kids. And there was Ringo, you can say it was fate if you're the deterministic type, but they simply didn't have the courage and maturity to face the loser. The world is full of losers, the ones that didn't make the cut, didn't survive the Darwinian race. Our culture sings, no time for losers, because we are the champions of the world. Statistically, though, there are bound to be more losers. Apart is sometimes completely random factors. Most of us reading this are losers because in our life, you can't always get what you want. Another song. There's a few songs in this, picking up on the song theme. So we are bound to lose. And we are bound to lose because of the random nature of winning and not necessarily because we're not good enough. Not enough is said about the Pete Bests out there and how they manage to deal with their predicaments, find new meaning, and keep happily living their lives. The more I mature, the more I find their stories much more interesting, telling, and inspiring than the stories of the winners. So that I found really interesting. So what inspired you about that interview? What was it? What inspired you to even make that Facebook post?
Wow. First of all, it's pretty cool when somebody else reads out your Facebook posts. It's kind of gives it a whole other dimension. Um, yeah, I'm really glad you connected with that post. It caught me by surprise as well, like having to write it.
Mm.
It's one of those things that just popped up on my feed, that interview with David Letterman. And I'm a real diehard Beatles fan. Like I love the
Yes.
Beatles, and I never really gave a lot of thought about Pete Best. I knew the story,
Mm.
but I kind of I guess I never paid a lot of attention to his story. And then seeing that interview, I started noticing the dynamics there. One dynamic was that David Letterman, as the interviewer, was pushing to get those answers for the really uncomfortable questions. Like
Yes.
the big one being, how can you live with yourself
Mm.
after such a failure? Like not
Yes.
almost being on the verge of joining the biggest band in the world and all the implications financially and otherwise. So he was kind of really digging that way as the interviewer. And then there was the crowd, which I noticed had a really interesting dynamic there, because they were laughing. And I just felt so sorry for Pete Best sitting there. But to my amazement, I guess the guy must be used to being put in that spot as well.
Mm.
Um, he and again, I think, like I wrote, the crowd I don't think was malicious. I think they were uncomfortable and unease,
Yes.
because we don't know how to deal with such a story. We're not used to those kind of story being dished out. And Pete Best sitting there was very authentic and was able to say those words. I really liked what he said. Like, I managed to retain my identity in my own sweet way.
Yes.
It's such a cool statement.
It's
And
very specific too, isn't it? It's not some trope, something that he's memorized from somewhere. It's like, in my own sweet way. That's just really unique. I haven't heard anyone describe I don't think I've even heard a sentence like that before.
I know, and it's really great. And all of a sudden, it put the focus on this guy,
Mm,
and I guess it met me in a place in my own life where I could much more relate to Pete Best. Um, I guess with more maturity and perspective, um, I'm more interested in those stories because in my own life and noticing how other people travel this life journey, you're bound to meet with more failure, probably more failure than success.
yes.
And we don't really talk about it. We don't emphasize the failures. We
Mm,
kind of like dish them to the side and ignore them, really. And it creates a lot of issues for people.
yes. And I think also we're uncomfortable to talk about our failures. So I was having this conversation with my mentor this morning because look, the reason that your post probably caught me how it did or reached me the way it did is because I'm going through a lot of change in my life at the moment, and I've had there's a lot of endings been happening in my life in the last few years, and some of it's been like death related endings, but others been business and my work and my career, and there's been lots of grief. But
Uh-huh.
I also have been working through shame and discomfort and embarrassment about this should have been like this or this should have worked out like that.
Yeah.
And it really, and I know myself because my mentor said to me this morning, well, have you thought about talking about this in your podcast? I'm like, oh, no, yeah, and I kind of said yes, but no, but yes, but no, because people do that, it's when they're, and I was kind of joking and saying it, like, when they've got the program and they're saying, hey, I was destitute and living in my car, but now I'm on six figures every 2 weeks and I sell my program. That's when people tell the story.
That's right. That's right. It's
But
true, isn't it?
telling the story kind of when you're in it,
Yeah.
much
Keeping it
more
real.
uncomfortable because I'm kind of in that space at the moment and it's a very uncomfortable space to be in. I don't know
Yeah.
what's going to happen. And
Yeah.
so, yes, it is uncomfortable talking about failure or, or,
Uh,
and again, that's the next thing we can discuss, I suppose, because what is failure versus
yep.
success
Yep.
and how do we measure that? And I feel like for me, part of my way through this has been to, yes, we've got the reality of you can say failure and success. Like success is when you've made lots of money and when everyone loves you or whatever your measurement might be. But there's lots of successes you can get out of something that aren't those things,
Yep.
or you might have those things and that might be briefly.
Yeah. I mean,
And how do you measure it all in the end?
big questions again,
Yes.
Fiona. I mean, I think first of all, I love what you said there, and I really agree with you about when we do mention failures, the narrative is always again to kind of like celebrate the success.
Yes.
I know as a kid, I remember there was like a Nike ad with Michael Jordan, and he said, "I had to lose that many games and miss that many shots." In order to become the winner that I am. So,
Yes.
and like you'll hear these stories about Madonna and how all the labels rejected her, and even the Beatles that were rejected by
Yes.
numerous labels, and Dr. Seuss, and all. It's always about, okay, you have to be persistent because you'll fail, but then you'll succeed. And I think
Mm.
not enough is said about you might just fail. You're not going to
Yes.
succeed at the end, and it's not like a goal necessarily. Um, because there's a lot of random factors out there. It doesn't mean you're not good enough. Sometimes it's just could be a technicality that means that you're not in the list. Something as vicious as a selection of like you go right, you go left. It could be so random, and I think because we worship the winners so much, we bring so much shame about us when we can't relate to those stories. And those stories are really few and numbered and actually unrealistic.
Mm.
And so I think and especially, I mean, today in the social media age where all you can see is people obviously posting about their success stories, and how successful their lives are. They'll never like post anything about how, confused they feel at the moment, miserable, lost, depressed, etc. It just doesn't sell as well as the winning story. So yeah, I guess to try and answer your question, like how I see success, I love Leonard Cohen's quote that he says, "Success is survival."
Wow.
So
Yeah. That
it's
whole I'm still here.
if you're here, well done, mate.
Yes.
You're successful, and I think we need to remember that and look at the bigger picture. Like, to get you here, in the first place on this planet,
Mm.
statistically, that chances are you're a winner already if you made it into the
Yes.
planet. Okay, so that's enough to celebrate your entire life around the ability that you're born here, and all the generations, and your forefathers and their forefathers, and etc. All the people, all that lineage that was needed to make you
Mm.
is already like something inconceivable.
Yes.
Um, that's one thing, and the fact that you're able to maintain this life, that's another reason to celebrate. So
Yes.
that's how I see success. And what happens on the way if if you make your goals, if you don't make your goals, I mean, come on,
Mm.
who cares?
And sometimes, I mean, I suppose I'm quoting a song again. Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans.
That's right. That's right.
And it is that. So I think that sometimes it's great to have a plan and it's great to have goals and dreams and all of that. Sometimes life is leading you somewhere, but it might not be where you think it is. And I think sometimes I know myself, what I'm guilty of is getting caught up in but it should be this, that should look like
Uh-huh.
this. And I had planned for this. And this is not what's happening. That
Yeah.
is happening. And at some point you're kind of going, okay, well, I'm trying so hard for this. And the harder I try to hold on to it, the more it slips away. And we don't even see the thing that's there in front of us because we're so busy with the idea that it should look a specific way, that success is a specific thing. And if it doesn't look like that, then it's not success.
Yes. Yes. And where did
Mm.
we get that idea in the first place? And I mean, I'm seeing so many relationships around me break up
Mm.
because of that, because people have an idea of how a relationship should be and how they should be feeling, and yeah, they're kind of missing out, or ignoring the real successful achievements that they've made, by just being in a relationship and
Yes. Yeah.
etc.
And it's
Um,
probably a whole other topic, but I find my personal experience is that a healthy relationship, it's someone who actually holds up a mirror to you and helps you grow.
and
And
it's not always
not always
comfortable, as you
comfortable,
know,
and it's
as
not always
anyone
easy.
knows in a
So it's
relationship.
much easier when that mirror is held up and go, "Oh, he's a bastard," or "She's a so and so," and get out of there, than it is to go, "Oh, look at that.
Yeah,
Hmm,
is there
okay."
something in that I'm seeing here?
It's a bit
Yeah.
uncomfortable. I know one of my first few times my husband held up a mirror to me, and I could be a real bitch, and I didn't identify as that, of course, because I'm a good person and all the
Yeah.
things that we think about ourselves. And the first time I saw, yeah, anyway, that's a whole other topic. But
Yeah.
it is part of, you're right. It's not it's not recognizing something for what it is and, oh, the relationship's a failure because we're not happy 24/7. No one's happy 24/7. How's that even a thing? You
Yeah,
know,
how did that become an ideal? It's a really good question. Yeah.
I even saw someone on socials this morning, actually. I can't remember who it was, but someone was talking about how they had been going through a sad time. And someone said, "Oh, look, you just need to go and get treatment for your depression." And there is depression is a thing, yes, but being sad is also a normal human emotion. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's not a pathology. Sometimes you're just
Yeah.
sad because you're
Yeah.
grieving. And so I think also pathologizing things that are normal human emotions. Sometimes, yes, it is depression. I'm not saying that, but it's just when we pathologize I would say that I've been incredibly sad for at least 3 or 4 years now. I've
Yeah,
had a lot of grief around me,
yeah,
and I that's okay. Like, it doesn't mean I
yeah,
haven't had happy moments, but that's okay. That's just where I'm at in life. That's just what's happening, and I don't need to. I don't know. That doesn't need to be pathologized in any way. If I wasn't functioning, yes, but you can be functioning and still just be generally sad.
yeah. I agree with you, and I think at least you're in touch with your emotions. So
Yes,
if you can sense it, that's that's a start, and there's no reason to bring in the second stage of judgment of like, oh, this is a
yes,
bad
yeah,
emotion or a good
yeah.
emotion. It's
Or
just
you're
an
only allowed to be
emotion.
sad for this long, you know.
Yeah, you're not. It's funny, like, because I'm studying psychotherapy now, and there's a book called the DSM. It's the Diagnostic
Yes,
Statistic Manual. It's basically the book that kind of diagnoses all the mental
yes.
conditions out there, and it keeps getting updated. And of course, once you read it, you're like, oh, I got a bit of this, I got a bit of that. I know somebody like this. So, but it's funny, like, even with something like grief, there's a definition there. And I think something is defined, grief is defined as a mental condition. There's like a sort of like a maximum time. Like if you're grieving more
Mm,
than 3 months, apparently, I think it's
yes,
3 months, the figure, then it becomes a condition. Who said that? Like,
yes.
it's just like all these
Whoever
really
said
random.
that has never lost someone, clearly, because if
Well,
you've
everyone's
lost
got a
someone,
different way of dealing
yeah,
with grief. But I think, again, we got to remember the context. And this is also tying in with that Facebook post that I put on. We live in a society, and the society has a narrative and it has a way of seeing things. So I guess the grief, like, if, okay, take your time, grieve, but if you don't go back to society as a functioning individual,
yes,
well, you're probably abnormal now, and we're gonna have to treat you.
yes.
So, but
Oh,
if we lived in a different society, say where it wasn't that important to go back to work, you
mm,
could actually go through your process for, I don't know, a year or two or
yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
and actually deal with it. Maybe would have looked different. So we live,
yes,
yeah, we got to remember that it's all in context.
yeah. And grief is only a comfortable topic to talk about in the past, not in the present. No one wants to be present in the
And this
discomfort.
and the same with failure. I think, like,
Mm,
because of Pete Best really intrigued me. I was like, here's a case of someone who's alive. He's being interviewed and he's celebrating, the ordeal he went through, and saying, I came out, I'm what did he say, I'm my sweet self, and
yes,
I found my way. um, but that's a rare case. Usually it's we love, also another thing is a society that we love is the individuals that after their death we celebrate them as winners, but during their lives they were total losers. Like,
yes,
like Van Gogh, who like sold one painting in his
yes,
lifetime,
yeah,
and now everybody, like, his stuff's getting auctioned for millions of dollars. And actually, from like the music world, which I can relate to,
mm.
another story that I really love is, have you ever heard of Dave Von Ronk?
I don't think so.
Dave Von Ronk, he was one of, kind of like the major figures in the folk scene in the early 60s in the West Village in New York.
Okay.
So it was the same scene that Bob Dylan was a part of. And there's a really funny story, I mean, incredible story, that Dylan um, watched, or they were all hanging out together, I'm assuming. So he knew that Dave Von Ronk had a version of a folk song called "The House of the Rising Sun." There is a house in New Orleans, and he actually, Dave Von Ronk, made the arrangement that we know today as "The House of the Rising Sun," which the Animals later covered as well. But he turned it into, chose a certain chord progression and a certain melody and made it what it was. And Dylan heard it, and he nicked it. He went on to record it on his first album. And the famous story was that he bumped into Dave Von Ronk a few days after he recorded it,
Mm.
and he asked him, "Hey, Dave, is it okay if I like use your song? I want to put it on my album." And Dave said, "Well, no, I'm going to record it soon. I'm going to record like in a few weeks, and I'd really prefer if I record it first." And Dylan just said, "Uh oh." Because you already
Oops.
used it. Oops, yeah. And it was actually that song, because there wasn't a lot of good stuff on that first Dylan album. It was that song that, like, made Dylan what he was at the time, and enabled him to record another album, right?
Mm.
So, but we know about Bob Dylan, but nobody knows about Dave Von Ronk, or
Mm.
hardly anyone knows about him, right?
Yes.
And here's another story. And by the way, the Coen brothers made a film sort of based on that story, which is called Inside Llewyn Davis.
Okay.
Um, so it's about the thousands of artists that we don't hear about, and they're actually not any less good as the ones that made it to the top. Sometimes they're even better, but they just,
Yes.
for whatever reasons, they took the wrong turn or the right turn or whatever you call it, but they
Mm.
never ended up in the same place. But we don't celebrate them.
Mm. Yeah. And for you too, I feel like it is a real unique thing for people in the music business, because people have very specific idea, or the general public maybe, I know, when I say people, who do I mean by people? But anyway, there's specific ideas about what success means, and who's successful. And
Yeah,
there's very small number of people in the world who become, I don't know, the Bob Dylans or the Rolling Stones or the Taylor Swifts or Harry Styles or whoever the latest is. And some of
yeah,
those people do get to become that, like the Rolling Stones. They've had 60 years of being the Rolling Stones, and they might not be, well, even if they're bringing out new stuff, nobody really cares about the new stuff. And I'm a big Rolling Stones fan, not having it, but we just love the
sure,
greatest hits. Um, there, there's very few people that get to have a whole 60 years of being the Rolling Stones, the greatest band in the world kind of thing.
yep,
And then some people get 1 year, some people get one song, some people get
yep,
10 years, some people get whatever as being the latest thing.
yeah,
And then they're not. But I
yep,
see, because I know a lot of musicians, I see them still involved in doing a lot of things, but
yes,
because they're no longer kind of the latest thing,
yep,
there's a perception there that, oh, where did they go? Oh, they're nowhere. Well,
yeah,
no,
yeah,
they're somewhere actually doing something.
yeah.
So, what's your perspective on that?
I
Because
mean,
you have ridden that ride yourself to a certain extent.
yeah, I mean that's a matter that's very close to my heart,
Mm.
because I'm an aging musician now as well, so I'm in that category. It's kind of like soccer players or dancers. Ironically, I mean, I can still make music and still perform and write, but I'm already like considered too old. If you try and take my songs to a station like Triple J in Australia, it's too old. They're going to shoot
Yes.
you to the double J level, and even there, it's challenging. Um, and yeah, I mean, in my life, my story, like kind of like sharing, I guess, being a bit more vulnerable here, is that I had to go through a really big journey with my definition of success and my attitude, because I started off in my early 20s and put stuff out there, and it immediately became successful. And again, what's successful? Like I, the first song I ever released became a hit. And so everything started falling into place really quickly for me. And I found myself touring Australia and touring the world and having songs played on the radio and money coming in and all those things you dream about as an artist just happening straight off the bat. So I guess because I was like this happy go lucky type, um, as long as I was riding that wave, I was like, this is great. This is what's supposed to be happening. Um, then naturally, the laws of nature caught up with me, and so um, my second album, which I ironically named Trust, it didn't do as well as the first album that I put out.
Mm.
Now, it's all relative. Like I was still getting airplay. I was, people were still coming to shows, but it wasn't the same. Like it wasn't as big as the success of this first album, and it sent me into a spiral of confusion and of trying to figure out what's wrong. Why isn't this working? And I started blaming my band. I was blaming my management. I was blaming the label. I was blaming myself. I was just looking for someone to blame, and it was really weird because um, when I first put out stuff, I knew nothing about the business. I was completely ignorant about how stuff works. All of a sudden, when fast forward to the second album, when I gained a bit more knowledge, um, I was starting to look for reasons, and I had the biggest thing I had was expectations all of a sudden.
Mm.
And you know what they say, like the bigger the expectations, the bigger the regret and the failures. So then I think I got my lesson, that stuff doesn't necessarily work out always the way you expect it to work out. And that I was actually really lucky. Can I swear in your podcast?
Absolutely.
I was really fucking lucky,
Yes.
So, and I didn't realize how lucky I was until I wasn't as lucky. Um, and for me, that kicked off a process of a few years of really like soul searching and kind of like leaving music for a bit and doing other things and then coming back. And I think now I've developed a healthier relationship with it all, where I I just know what I need to be doing as a person that wants to express himself creatively.
Mm.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be done through a specific medium, um, like say that project that I had, Old Man River. It doesn't have to be through that. I can be creative through so many other ways, and I'm still really lucky. I'm talking to you now from a recording studio that I run, and I make music every day. I still work at it.
Mm.
Um, Maybe I'm not playing the biggest stages anymore and all that, but it's just kind of like I treasure the moments I had, and I treasure the moments I'm having right now. And I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. Anything can happen.
Mm.
So that's the kind of attitude I'm trying to cultivate now. And I always try and talk to it about, musicians and artists that are in my sort of age group, or in this condition, or went through something like that. Because I think it's amazing to see the cycles. Everyone that's entering it, and I remember how I thought about it when I entered the cycle. I was like, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna be the one that's gonna make it.
Yes.
And again, it's that societal conditioning that we don't want to know about the losers. We don't want to know about the ones that don't make it.
Mm.
Specifically with music, but I think it's like that with every other category.
Mm.
The ones you do hear about, your Taylor Swifts, statistically, you're probably, you can believe that you're going to get there, and that's fine. But look, you're probably not going to get there.
Mm.
Somebody has to say
Yeah.
that, and it's okay. There's other ways in this world that you can fulfill your purpose in a really
Yes.
meaningful way. It doesn't have to be that way. You're shooting at a very, 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 very narrow goal there,
Yes.
and you're kind of destined to fail in a sense.
So really, what it comes down to is where you find your meaning. And do you find meaning? Is the only thing you find meaning in that you have certain sales and records, or that's that's showing my age. Record sales.
Yeah,
I've got lots of records.
streams. It's all about streams.
But once upon a time it was that, and see, these days too, the world has completely changed as well, because I'm following an artist at the moment who I'm really enjoying. His name is Ren Gill, and he's based in Wales, and he's just
Okay.
got over 1 million followers on YouTube, and he's phenomenal, and he's really raw in his he's had a lot of health challenges and mental health challenges, and he's still in the middle of a lot of that. And so he's really honest and open and really vulnerable. And but his music is fantastic, and I'm even getting into rap, which is so not me. I'm learning what a flow is, all these things that I had no idea, showing my age again. But he's doing that without, he's done a lot of that without a label. He's done that, on YouTube. So these days, there's different ways, there's different measurements of success. It can be, YouTube downloads, all those things. However, there's also the other measurements of success, as in, you're a father now.
Yeah.
And that must surely give you a different perspective of what does it mean to be a successful man or a successful person. Tell me about that. Tell me about your other perspectives of success, or just being, happiness in life, or just things that give you that level of, what was the word I used a moment ago? Just a reason to get up every day and something to
Yes.
enjoy or be part of.
Yeah. I mean, I like perspective on things.
Mm.
It really helps me personally find meaning
Yeah, I
in
think meaning
life.
was the word I was looking for before that I couldn't find.
Yeah.
I have brain damage. I can't always find the words.
Oh,
So,
tell me about it.
so, so tell me about the meaning.
Um, well, first of all, I really recommend to anyone listening. There's a couple of books that, if you want that instant perspective about life through someone's actual stories, they actually lived it. I
Mm.
really, really recommend one book that's called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor
Oh, yeah.
Frankl.
Yes.
I don't
Yeah,
know if you've
Viktor
heard
Frankl.
about that.
Brilliant. Yes.
Uh, and the other is actually a student of Viktor Frankl. It's called Edith Eger,
Yes.
and it's called The Choice.
Yes.
And they're both, I guess, they can be defined as existential therapists, but they both went through the Holocaust.
Yes.
And what's amazing about their story is that they actually, in the direst conditions, in a concentration camp, are able to find meaning and freedom. So two really big things. And what I really took from it is that they are saying that there's no comparison of suffering. When somebody suffers, they suffer. It's not like someone suffers more than another person. Like the fact that they've been in a concentration camp doesn't mean that their suffering is greater than someone who's suffering because, say, somebody scratched their car that morning.
Yes.
Like we all have different capacities of suffering, and the suffering is real for everyone.
Yes.
But still, the fact that they were able to be in these external conditions and find that space to find meaning is
Mm.
incredible. And a lot of it is through choice, like just realizing that we always have a choice. So yeah, the reason I mentioned those guys again, like for me, it's an instant perspective to remember their stories and try and apply it in my life, which I've done. For example, I grew up in Israel, and in Israel you have to you have to enlist to the army. It's a compulsory army service. For men, it's 3 years. For women, it's 2 years. And I never wanted to join the army, and I ended up there. And I guess if I can relate it to anything, it's a bit like a prison experience in the sense that you get given a uniform and you become a number, and you get orders from people that I didn't hold them in much regard. Let's put it that in a gentle way.
Mm.
But you have to obey authority, and your freedom is taken away from you. Your physical freedom. You can't just leave the base and go wherever you want. And so I had to deal with all those things from a pretty young age, like since I was 18, and it was really tough. Especially the first year of just like adjusting to it. And then I read Frankl's book again because I read it as a teenager. Then I read it again in the army, and I realized that even in those conditions, there was space to find freedom. So those external conditions can't they can't reach your inner world. So the richer your inner world is, the more you have freedom. That's the resolution that I had, and that's something I took with me then to, like, pretty much all the other challenges that followed.
Yeah, I've read those books a few times. Edith Eger, I think she's got another one. She's got The Gift and
Yes, that's right. The Gift was a
there's two
sequel.
of them, and they're both brilliant. And then there's Elie Wiesel. I don't
Elie
know if I've
Wiesel,
said his
yeah.
name right. And was his book, was he Night? Was it Night or something? I can't remember. But all three of those authors, uh, all the way I see it is, if that person can find meaning after that experience, then we all can.
Yes.
And it's what you look for. And I think and like you were saying, we have grief, we have loss, we have all different things, and I don't think it is fair to measure one person's against someone else's.
Mm.
And always the way I see it, I feel like it's okay. It's okay to have your feeling however you feel. We need to have feelings to move. You need to move through feelings, not pretend you don't have them. So me with my sadness, or other people with whatever's going on for you, if you're angry or sad or whatever. I think the problem, it only becomes an issue if you get absolutely stuck in it,
Mm-hmm.
and it sort of just drags you down, and you almost it becomes your identity, I suppose.
Sure. Yep.
I think that's when there can start to be a problem, and it's a difference between, because what they talk about, it really is. I can't remember the Viktor Frankl. There is a great quote of his, something about the responding to situations. I can't think of the
Yeah.
space
Yeah,
between.
it's a great quote. Yeah, the space
Yeah,
between action. There's
yeah.
always between every
Uh,
action. There's enough space for choice. Yeah, we're
Yeah, so
probably ruining it. We
it's
should get the.
yeah, we should look it up. I don't know, but it's a great quote, and I think it's that. I think ultimately it's okay to know, yeah, look, I'm allowed to feel a certain way, or I'm allowed to have a whinge about it, or I'm allowed to feel sad, or whatever it is. That's fine, and I don't think that we should shame people for having their experience, or we should try and rush people to not have whatever experience they need to have. But
100%.
on the other hand, though, I think
Yes.
it is good to have, like you were saying before, perspective. So
Yeah.
my perspective is, look, I know I'm going through a really hard time, and I'm going to honor that and just allow myself to have the feelings I need to have. But I also have enough perspective to know that, you know what, I woke up this morning. I'm really lucky. I live in, a beautiful place, and I have electricity, and I have clean water, and my husband's alive, and I'm alive, and we both have our health, and there's a
Exactly.
million
Yeah.
reasons why
Yeah.
I'm super lucky
Yeah.
right here, right now. So I have the perspective to know that. But still, it's okay for me to honor whatever feeling I'm having. That's fine. But if I turn it into, I'm the only person who's ever had this experience, and nobody else has ever experienced this before
Nobody
me.
knows. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just, I think it's, if you understand that. Here you go. I found the quote. So this is Victor E. Frankl, and it's, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And that space is our power to choose our response. In our
Mm.
response lies our growth and freedom. So in that stimulus,
Pretty
between
good.
stimulus and response, space is our power to choose our response. And that's actually what it comes down to, doesn't it? We're talking
Yes.
about success and
Yes.
failure, talking about anything in life. It's knowing that we can choose our response, isn't it?
100%. And plus, like, we know those stories of people that are successful, yet
Mm,
their response to their success is not what we expect. Like your Amy Winehouse,
mm.
Kurt Cobain, Chris Cornell. So all these
Yes,
people that are actually miserable and suffering, yet they're considered successful by society. And again,
yes,
that's exactly it. There's the stimuli, but they're their choice, their response is different to what you'd expect. So it doesn't mean anything. Like I guess your state, your conditions, the battles you lost, the battles you won, you still have a choice there.
Mm, yes. And, going back to that, Pete Best thing, it's like, it's in your own sweet way. So
Uh-huh.
why, why can't we, well, maybe we should be looking at our lives and looking for the successes in our lives and looking for the things where the places where we have gratitude, the places where we are blessed. Because when we do that and when we start to see it's amazing how the human ability for us to know all of our failures. And in a moment, we could list all of our failures. I've done a thing and I've done a thing and I've done a. And then when someone turns around and says, but you did that and you've done that and you
Yeah.
do this and you do this
Yeah.
and you've done that
Yeah.
and you've really inspired this person, you've really inspired
Yeah.
whoever. And you kind of, oh, did I? Oh, okay. Like, our
Yeah, we
ability
love
to do that.
focusing on the negative, and that's why news is so popular as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yes,
And we can
exactly.
definitely recognize shortcomings of our partners and people around us. That's the stuff we love focusing on.
Yes, yeah. So focusing on the gifts, focusing on, those things that do bring us meaning. And I think, yeah, I think that if I could sort of summarize what we've talked about, it really is about finding meaning, and it's about how and where you look to find the meaning, and maybe reframing some of that.
Uh-huh.
That meaning just isn't being a Taylor Swift, and there's nothing wrong with that. Good on her.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. That's not the way that most people in the world are going to find meaning. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how
Yeah.
talented you are.
By the way, with Tay Tay, I saw that documentary about her on Netflix. I think it's called Miss Americana. And there is a scene there. It's quite incredible where I think she's on the phone to her manager, and she doesn't get nominated to a certain category in the Grammys. And this is after she won like a
Yeah.
lot of Grammys in her lifetime. And
Yes.
she is bummed. She is really hard on herself and on the manager. And you just, yeah, that just goes to show you everyone's caught up in that loop of self judgment
Mm.
where obviously if I was in that room, I'd go, hey, Tay Tay, come on girl, you,
Yeah.
you got enough reasons to celebrate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's losing perspective there, isn't it? And it is a lot of very successful people are people that I would describe as perfectionists, and perfection ultimately I think will bring you undone as well, because
Oh
it's that
yeah.
whole. I think Brene Brown, her definition, it's something along the lines of performing to avoid shame, blame, and judgment.
Exactly, it's the fear of failure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if the work, the output you're doing is based on you're just trying not to, if I just keep going and just keep going, no one will notice that I'm a failure, or no one will notice how terribly flawed I am.
Yep.
Eventually, that's going to fall apart, and that ain't going
Yes.
to be pretty when that falls apart.
No, it's going to unravel in a
Yeah.
catastrophic,
Yes.
incredible
Whereas
way.
maybe when we can have perspective and understand the meaning in lots of different things, that
Yes.
allows us to find meaning every day. And if there's extra great things that happen in our lives, and there's awards and there's monetary success or there's fame or whatever else there is, great.
Yeah.
But if that
Yeah.
doesn't come,
Yeah.
is that going to be the end for us? Or are we going to say, oh,
Yeah.
there's so much meaning in my life anyway?
Yeah.
And do
Again,
those things bring greater meaning anyway?
exactly. And like, I guess also acceptance
Mm.
is another key word. Just accept whatever is happening right now. And yeah, and like we were talking about all these emotions that we might feel, like if the more we accept an emotion, say like sadness rising, and not judge it and try and reject it, the
Yes.
more probability that we're actually going to deal with the information that it carries, whatever it wants to teach us at the moment.
Yes.
And the same goes to everything that we go through. Like, just accept whatever is happening. Like, this is the story right now.
Yes.
um, it's being written right now the way it should be written, and you have to have full trust in it. I guess some people find, I don't know, some people that are more deterministic say it's all fate, but I don't view it as fate. I think it's just we have the choice in every given moment to navigate yes or no, left or right. We can always take that call. And even Pete Best, like he in another interview I checked of his, he was kind of like maybe giving a little wink towards Paul McCartney. He said, "For me, it's not about yesterday; it's about today and tomorrow." So
Yes.
when he was asked about how he deals with it, again with his biggest failure, it's like it's not about yesterday; it's about today and tomorrow.
Mm. Yes. Yeah, definitely. That might be a nice place to leave it. What do you think?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I could talk to you about this forever, and it's a really
Yeah, we
interesting
can
topic,
keep chatting.
and we could, but might end up
Stuff to
being like a
do.
Joe Rogan length podcast. And I don't think I've got the following yet to do 3 or 4 hour podcasts and have people
And
still
the
hang around.
caffeine, I think he just lets his
Yeah,
guests like
you
have so
need a
much
lot more
coffee.
caffeine.
Yeah,
But yeah, I like that though. It is more. It's not about yesterday. I think the yesterday with yesterday just comes the learnings, doesn't it? It's like, what can I learn from this? What can I learn and how can I do better, or and where can I find meaning? But ultimately it's about what you do today and what you do tomorrow.
yeah.
And yesterday it happened, all you can do is just
It's yesterday.
take your
It's
lessons.
old news. Yeah,
And the same if you think yesterday was your best time,
yeah.
you know,
Exactly. It's
that's
still
yep.
yesterday.
Well, it was great, but that's still yesterday, and that doesn't mean there's not great things ahead. It's just how do you define what great things are? And I think at the end of life, and I know that the last few years I've spent a lot of time around death. I think
Yeah,
you you change how you measure meaning, and I've learned that sometimes the small moments are the things that you really remember. Like you think you're going to remember the big event or the big thing or that time I did. And it's not saying that we don't remember those things,
yeah,
but it's those small moments of being human with another human
yeah,
being.
yeah.
They somehow, there's
Oh
something about
yeah.
those that where you can find the gold, I think.
Oh yeah. I mean, like I think Jack Cornfield, in A Path with Heart, said that people that were working in hospices, people about to die, would
Mm,
hear about just on their deathbed, literally. People wouldn't talk about their bank account and all the
yeah.
success and prizes and
Mhm.
achievements that they
Yeah.
had. The main question was like, did I love well? So it's when you think about that and your everyday life interactions, am I loving well right now? Did I love well? And
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And I would argue that, well, anyone who's been through hard times will know, and exactly what you've just described to me as well, is that meaning, and maybe it had less meaning in the beginning because you didn't really understand, like it happened for you, success happened, but now you've had, and I'm not saying had less meaning, maybe you didn't, I don't know, maybe your way of perceiving it is different or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm making a judgment
yeah,
statement on
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But now that you've been through, you went through harder times, and you really had to examine yourself and look at yourself and spend a lot of time in discomfort
yeah.
at uncomfortable places. There's a lot of meaning that comes out of that. I think that if you let yourself go through the pain and the discomfort and all of those things, that creates a whole lot of meaning that maybe the success itself did or didn't provide in the beginning.
Yes, definitely. I mean, yes, so many lessons that come with that.
Yes. Yeah. So being prepared to sit in the discomfort.
Yeah. Like it's life. It's life, baby. You're gonna suffer.
That is life.
It's
That is
inevitable.
life.
Inevitable.
Yeah.
Suffering's part of
Yeah.
it. Part of the deal.
Yeah. Yeah. So really, and what is it? The WD-40. I think the reason it's called 40 is because they did it 39 times and it didn't work, and the 40th version of the solution worked. right?
Oh, wow. Okay, right.
So a lot
I
of
like that.
success comes from lots and lots of failures until you succeed, and it also comes from, as we said, it's finding meaning in life and finding what success looks like for you on any given day. Because we're lucky to be here, we're lucky to have a life. Let's find meaning in it, and find meaning in it now. Don't wait. You can't wait until you can find meaning one day when it all lines up and it looks like this or looks like that.
Yeah,
Nope, it's today. It's now.
totally.
Go and find some meaning now.
Especially, yeah, when it's not working out. That's the best time to find the meaning.
Yes, yeah.
That's
So,
the meaning that's going to hold.
oh, it is absolutely, and that's the thing. The Taylor Swift thing, or whenever you see, well, you only have to watch the Elvis film, don't you?
Oof.
Whenever you see these people with extreme success, everything comes with there's a balance. It comes also with extreme nasty stuff,
Oh my
a lot
god.
of
I mean,
downside.
show me the people that have handled success well. They're very numbered. They're very few.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah,
very
and they're
few.
often the people that have taken themselves out of it, taken themselves away, and like the people who, the movie stars that have moved out of Hollywood, and they've got a perspective in life because they go and live somewhere where no one cares who they are.
Yeah, but
That
who
kind of
knows? Like
thing.
maybe what's his name? Bill Murray. That's the only
Yeah,
one I can think about.
yeah, I think did Bruce
Uh,
Willis do that as well? I can't remember now, but there's a
yeah,
handful of them over the years who've kind of,
they kept
that
it
you
real.
can. Yeah, and I think it's that ability because if everyone around you all of the time is a yes man that is being paid to tell you how wonderful you are,
Yeah.
that can't lead to anywhere good.
There's something about like somebody like a Leonard Cohen that, became successful when he was 40.
Mm,
So he had a whole lifetime, I'm assuming, of big failures until that moment. And then his attitude from that moment on, like there's so much appreciation there and taking things in the right perspective.
yes.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, keeping it
Yeah.
real.
Yeah, definitely. So, every success and failure, first of all, they're both subjective, I suppose, but secondly, they both come with their level of baggage and their level of stuff to sort out. Life is life, life is messy. And I think the truth is that it comes in packages where you have perceived success, perceived failure, might be actual success, failure might be perceived, whatever. And life is full of all of that. So I think that the sooner we realize that we're human beings having a human life, and there's a whole bunch of all sorts of stuff in there, and it's about learning to just ride along with it, figure it out along the way, learn stuff. And again, with Viktor Frankl, it's finding meaning, and then it's your response. It's how you choose to respond to stuff. It's pretty much it, eh?
Yes. Yep. Summed it up pretty
Yeah.
nicely.
So, look, I would like to thank you. We could go on forever, but we won't. So, thank you so much, Ohad. I've really enjoyed this discussion. It's really been good to take a deep dive into your perspective on success and failure, and what that looks like, and what that means, and where we get our meaning from. All of that. I think it's just I really appreciate you taking the time to do that today, and I hope that the listeners and the watchers, however people consume this, I hope you get something from it, because it really is important to understand. I think these are things that the human beings, the earlier we learn these things, the better off we are.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you for your unique perspective and taking the time out with me today. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks so much.
No worries. Thank you, Fiona. I really enjoyed it as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
All right.